Good evening, VV Nation. My name is Ryan, Senior Instructor here at VectorVest, and tonight I have a hot topic for you, and that is oil. It's been on the rise the past few months. Last month, OPEC members did agree on several cuts, pushing prices even higher. So in tonight's video, we're going to break down some articles to show you why I'm bullish on oil, at least until the end of the year. And in addition, we're going to jump into the software to show you the trends of this sector and some of the best stocks to select. Now, if that's something you're interested in, hit the like button and let's get started. Now, before we jump into the VectorVest 7 software and take a look at some great oil stocks and the oil sector as a whole, I do want to show you just these two quick articles. The first one being Goldman Sachs expects all-time high oil demand to spur large deficits, boosting prices. Now, as I read this article, the one thing I definitely did take away from this is that right now the U.S. oil rig count is at a 16-month low, and from its 2022 high, it is down 15%. Now, this information was provided by Baker Hughes. Now, the second article by Reuters titled Oil Rallies for Fourth Straight Week on Tightening Supply. Now, as I scroll down, a couple things I did want to mention here. It does state that oil supply is expected to be tight in the second half of 2023. Also, escalating tensions between Russia and Ukraine support oil price. And the last, investors are welcoming the stimulus measures in China to boost demand. Now, one thing I thought that was really interesting out of this article, if I scroll down, right here it states a shutdown of the grain corridor could hit supplies of ethanol and biofuels that are blended with oil products at a time that global grain markets are already tightening, which would lead to refiners using more crude oil. Again, this is only pushing up the demand while the supply side is currently constrained. Now let's jump into the VectorVest 7 software to see the sector and take a look at some great stocks that should be on your shopping list. All right, we're in the VectorVest 7 software. Up in front of us right now, I do have the sector graph for petroleum stocks. In the VectorVest program, we're tracking over 280 stocks to get this data. Now, we're just going to look at this chart from a technical perspective. Now, there's four things I want you to know. The first thing, see this downward trend line here from these prior swing highs touching this line, giving us a clear downward trend line for almost 10 months. We finally broke above that in the last few trading weeks, retested that trend line, and from there, the bulls took over. In addition, the 3 is currently above the 8-day exponential moving average, showing that momentum to the upside. Down below, if we use a vertical cursor, we could see that the RT finally went into positive territory back on July 7th. Now, for those that are new to our channel, RT relative timing is a technical indicator looking at the short-term price trend. It is an oscillator from 0 to 2. The oscillation point is at 1. Now, the last thing I did want to note, if I use a freehand line, there is actually a bullish divergence that occurred. Now, a bullish divergence is when price hits a new low. However, the oscillator fails to do so. So we see RT rising while price is falling. This is usually a bullish indication. The petroleum sector has taken off to the upside, breaking this downward trend line and continuing to rise. So now let's take a look at the stocks that make up this sector, and let's take a look at the top 10 VectorVest 7 picks. All right, so now for this list of stocks, I let the VectorVest 7 software do all of the work. And what I mean by that, right now we've got 283 stocks found throughout our database. However, we are looking at only the top 5. Now, the reason why these stocks made the list is because our master indicator, VST, on overall value, safety, and timing, these have the highest rating in the entire database. So let's break these down to give you a better picture of what's going on with these top 5 stocks. Now, one thing I definitely really like about this list, if we compare the price to the value column, only one stock right now is currently overvalued, FTI. So for example, if we look at Tidewater, currently trading at $59, the value right now is at just over $90. Now next, we do have RV, or relative value. Again, these indicators here, RV down to CI, are on a 0 to 2 scale. Above 1 is favorable, below 1 is unfavorable. The further you get away from 1 speaks to the magnitude of that favor. Now, just looking at all 5 of these stocks, great long-term price appreciation potential here. I mean, these are some of the highest ratings I've seen in the entire database. The lowest one is at 1.46. Now, next we have RS, or relative safety. This is just an indicator of risk. Now, if we notice here, this is where we're kind of struggling as far as indicators here. So some of these stocks are a little bit riskier. We got Tidewater as well. FTI did get above that threshold of 1 with a favorable rating. However, the other 3 here are going to be a little bit riskier in nature. Next, if we look at RT relative timing, this is our technical indicator. Now, that looks at the short-term price trend of these stocks. Now, if we see here, all very favorable ratings, so I know they're trending up and I know that there's some magnitude behind that trend. Now, again, the VSTs here are phenomenal. These are the highest overall VSTs out of 283 petroleum stocks. Now, all of these stocks do currently have buy ratings. And the one thing I did want to point out past the recommendation column is the GRT. Now, this is the growth rate in earnings. If we look here, phenomenal numbers here. The lowest number in the list is 35, while the highest number in the list is at 44. So let's break these down a little bit further and go into their graphs. So I'm just going to select Graph All. Here we go. We got Tidewater at the top of the list here, TDW. Look at this. If I do a freehand line, nice price action from lower left to upper right. We've got the buy rating. RT relative timing is above 1 and continuing to rise here. And look at this earnings per share. Nice stair-step fashion in earnings per share. This is exactly what we want to see in a graph. Now, if I scroll down, next on the list here, we got NEX. Now, one thing I will say here, we got the buy rating, but look at that 3 above the 8. I've got the 3 exponential and the 8-day exponential moving average of price. The 3 is above the 8, showing that momentum is still continuing. Now, it did hit a high as of yesterday, so if this is a position that you're considering getting into, we would like to see that high taken out to let us know that the momentum is still to the upside. Now, also, I will say to look at the RT relative timing, nice steady climb and relative timing. Now, the earnings per share has been rising over the first half of this past year. Steadily, it has been flattening out. But again, this is more of a momentum trade, so that may not play that big of a factor. But just take note of it. Now, let's scroll down. We got FTI here. Now, this is a beautiful stock price action here. Nice lower left, upper right. Just hit a new high. Look at that FTI. The RT of this is climbing nice and steadily. We got the strong buy rating. And look at the earnings per share. Nice steady rise in earnings per share. Really, really, really like this chart. Now, next we do have PBF Energy here. This price action not as smooth as some of the other charts. However, if we look at RT relative timing, that is continuing to rise here. And look at the earnings per share. The earnings per share is steadily climbing over the last 12 months. It is starting to wane just a little bit here. So out of the top 5 of these stocks, this is probably the least favorite one, just looking at the graph. Again, before we were looking at the indicators. However, I always recommend looking at a graph. Like the saying goes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So out of all the stocks we're looking at, this is probably the one that I would take most cautious of getting into. Last one on the list here is Patterson UTI. Again, not as pretty as a graph as those first 3. However, one thing I really do like about this, we got the buy rating here, but look at price action. You see this prior swing high here? This gold line represents yesterday's close. It closed right at that prior swing high back in March. I would like to see price action close above this level here. If I had a level of support resistance, so I imagine resistance is coming in right there, which it is. Yeah, so I definitely want to see price action break above this resistance zone. That way we get a sense of direction and confirm this momentum to the upside. Now, relative timing has been on the rise, which is a great indication of price momentum to the upside. The only thing I will say about this stock, the earnings per share starting to wane since the beginning of this year, since January. Again, so this is more of a momentum play. As long as that 3 remains above the 8 and price is able to take out this resistance level from this prior swing high, definitely looks like a good chart to be in. All right, just a quick recap here. I did give you some examples why I'm currently bullish on oil going into the second half of this year. Most notably, we have supply restraints and demand growth. Now, we did jump into VectorVest 7 system and showed you the top 5 stocks that are currently recommended in the petroleum sector. Now, of those top 5, TDW and FTI did have the nicest graphs. The other ones probably more so for technical traders. However, the 3 is above the 8-day moving average on all 5 of these stocks, and 4 out of 5 are undervalued. Now, if you found this video useful, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Till next time.
VectorVest.